Hey, what's going on YouTube? We're here with another top 10 list, and this time we're talking about the top 2-player or multiplayer games. Now keep in mind on this list, there's a couple games that are 2-player, but I don't consider them 2-player, like games like Double Dragon or other games where it's 2 players alternating, unless somehow these alternating players interact with each other somehow. I don't really consider that game to be a 2-player game. Double Dragon is just a 1-player game where you can basically have your buddy take over the next life on a different character, but it's not a 2-player interactive experience, so I'm not going to count that one. And there's a couple others that are in the same category that I'm not going to count either, with the exception of one game on this list, but I'll explain when I get there. So without further ado, here's the top 10 games. So at number 10 we have Battletoads, with its awesome OST and its fun 2-player simultaneous action. Battletoads is an excellent title. If you've never played it, don't expect to make it too far the first time playing this one. The difficulty is through the roof, not to mention there's a glitch that prevents you from beating the game on 2-player. But hey, if you can make it even that far into the game, you're already pretty amazing. Number 9 is Anticipation. One of the many board games for the NES, this is probably one of the most interesting. The best part about this game is that it's actually 4-player. And all you really do is the computer will draw something and you just have to guess what it is along with your 4 friends. It sounds simple enough, but it starts to get pretty challenging later on, and trying to beat your friends to guess what things are, not to mention spell things in the time that it provides for you, can be quite the challenge. This isn't a game you can play all the time, however, because there is limited puzzles, so it's one that you might want to play every now and then so it keeps it fresh. Number 8 on this list is Mule. Now Mule, I actually got this game when I was a kid, and I remember getting this one. It was a choice between this one and RoboCop, and I wanted RoboCop, but some other kid beat me to it. But looking back now, I'm actually really glad that I got Mule instead of RoboCop, because Mule is a great 4-player strategy board game, with lots to think about every time you play. You basically collect resources on land until the whole board is filled, and you have to buy and trade items, such as food and energy, and you mine for different things. And basically the winner is the one who has the most resources at the end. I really did like how this game played out, and if you're playing it with 4 players, it's another excellent multiplayer experience. So if you're looking for a great strategy board game, this is your game. Number 7 is Blades of Steel, and this is the only hockey game I've played on the NES. But it's a fun arcade-style game. You basically skate around the ice, switching between teammates, and just passing the puck back and forth. There isn't any penalties in the traditional sense of this game, however you can get into fights with your opponent if you body check them enough, and the fights are actually kind of fun. And when you're playing 2-player with this game, the fights are even better. There's nothing more fun than ramming into your friend and then punching him in the face, and then stealing the puck from him. The only real downside to this game is that you have to also control the goalie along with your players, and that can get a little hard when you're trying to defend your own goal as well as trying to get the puck out of your end. But besides for that, this game is great. Number 6 is Nightmare on Elm Street. So as much as James the Nintendo nerd like to crap all over this game, it's actually one of the best, if not the best, 4-player action game on the system. Whether you're playing 1 player, 2 players, all the way up to 4 players, it's actually really fun. And I find that the challenge actually just goes up the more people you add, because it gets a little more confusing as to what you're doing. The only real issue I have with this game is the controls are a little bit slippery. But other than that, it's a great entry on the NES, and if you have 4 people who want to play this game, I would definitely suggest it over a lot of others. Number 5 on the list is Contra. Now, Contra is probably most likely the most popular 2-player game on the NES, and for good reason. It's a fun, arcade-style shooter where basically all you do is just collect guns, collect power-ups, and just get through the levels. There really isn't much to think about in this game. It's a one-hit kill for you and one-hit kill for most of the enemies, except for bosses and a couple minor exceptions, but most things in this game die in one hit. And even with this game's extremely high difficulty, it's pretty fun, because I mean this game does have the Konami code, so you can get your 30 lives if you find it a bit too challenging and just kind of want to play through it. And I'm sure on many people's lists, this game would be number 1 in the 2-player category out of the games I've played. But for me, there's still 4 other games I'd rather play, but I think this one is always a great time. Number 4 on the list is Chip and Dale. Now this is probably one of the most frustrating 2-player games, because in this game not only can you hit your allies with the boxes that you're throwing, you can also pick up your ally and throw him too. I mean, there's some parts in this game where it's better to pick up your friend and kind of jump through the parts instead of trying to do it individually, but there's other times where you'll accidentally hit them or you'll accidentally throw them, and it really throws off the game. But it's also part of the game that makes the game really fun, because if you have the chance to get better at the game and learn to work together, I find this game is pretty rewarding that way. The only real issue besides for that I have with this game is that the boss fights are all a little monotonous, since they're all just basically grab the red ball and throw the red ball. But other than that, and that being a really minor complaint, this game is really solid. And I gotta say that this game is probably a must-have for any Nintendo collector. Number 3 on the list is conveniently Mario 3. Now this is the only two-player game that wasn't a board game and isn't simultaneous that didn't make the list. And the only reason this game did make the list is because your actions as first and second player do affect the other player. For instance, you can take items that one player would get from the mushroom house and the mushroom house disappears for him, or you can even challenge the other player in a little mini game. This game is the best Mario game on Nintendo and probably one of the best Mario games of all time. I would definitely throw this one in the top 10. Not to mention, if you play this game without the warp whistles, this game is pretty long and clocking in at about 3 to 4 hours, maybe even a bit longer, if you're not really just trying to rush through the game. This one is also another one that I say is a must-have for any Nintendo collector, and since this game was super popular, it's actually not too hard to find, so you could probably find a copy of this game really easily. Number 2 on the list is my favorite puzzle game, Yoshi. It was the third NES game that I ever owned, and I still have yet to get bored of it, all these years later. It's a simple matching puzzle game with the addition of Yoshi eggs, which adds a whole new level of risk versus reward compared to other puzzle games. There's also really cool handicap settings to choose from, so if you're a little better than your opponent or a little worse, you can adjust the handicap to make up for the difference in skill. This game is fun for hours, and personally I would pick this one over Tetris any day. Number 1 on the list is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. This is the arcade classic that's been ported to NES, and even though it's very different from its arcade counterpart, it plays really well on Nintendo, and when you have 2 people, it's even more fun just clearing out the rooms of the foot soldiers. The music is some of the best on NES, and Konami did an amazing job with this game. I find the level progression is great, and the funny thing is there's actually more levels in the Nintendo version than there is in the arcade. So you're actually getting more for your dollar for playing the Nintendo version. I really like the pacing in this game, and I don't think that it's too hard or too easy. It's that real sweet spot just between. But overall, this is a really great game, and I would highly recommend this to anyone. If you like beat-em-up games, this game is for you. So thanks guys for watching this top 10 list. Tomorrow we'll be coming in with the 10 worst NES games on this list that I've played. And on that note, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.